What up? My name is Emmanuel, aka Drina, and I know the title is pretty crazy, but I will explain. Now, I believe that Jesus was probably one of, if not the closest person to become perfect, right? Someone who is both connected to God, their highest good, and that is both also grounded, and is very, basically just and basically one with their highest self, right? Or at least the very closest to being one with their highest self, right? I believe that when I was when I was little, I used to think that these are theories that the astral is a lot more complicated than, or heaven is a lot more complicated than we think, in which like God is a chair and all those things, which I mean, it is probably closer to the truth than more people than are willing to accept. But I believe that if anyone would be the next God, it would be Jesus, right? No, I don't believe that God and Jesus are one. I think that that Jesus' soul is probably some sort of like higher being, that's maybe like an angel or something like that. That is, well, they make the angels his like siblings almost, right? Just in a different way. But I believe that Jesus is like as old as, say, like Lucifer, right? They say like, oh, Lucifer was God's favorite, but I believe that Jesus is probably the other one that's closest to God, just at least his soul, you know. And there's a lot more. I think that Jesus probably has different incarnations and all those things, just like any other like deity, soul, whatever, right? But I think that, and no, I'm not going to quote any scripture in this, so sorry, I'm not going to debate scripture. I'm just going to talk about what everybody already knows, in which is Judas, right? Now, I do not believe that it was necessarily, I believe that everything worked out how it was supposed to work out and how it was meant to work out, but I think it was more so like a lesson, right? In which that was also meant to be used as a lesson for everyone, in which don't keep someone around. Like, Jesus absolutely loved Judas, right? Like, I believe that, I'm pretty sure like that Judas was the closest to Jesus, right? And yet he did what he did. You know what I mean? So it's like the lesson is to not keep someone around. And Jesus actually, you can tell by like different, I guess, paintings, but the paintings aren't necessarily right or true, whatever. But if Jesus knew everything through his gifts and through his connection to God, right? Then why would he not know that Judas would betray him, right? And sacrifice him, essentially. Okay, that was basically sacrifice, for being honest. If you want to look at it in the logical way, Judas sacrificed the life of his closest friend for some money, or whatever actually came of that sacrifice, right? Who knows? You would never know. No one was there. Oh, and no one alive was there. Okay, but it's like, if Jesus had taken the warning, had heeded the warning, and actually left Judas behind, right? Of course, it was on Judas that Judas did that, but on the path towards Jesus' highest good, right? Judas was not able to stay there, right? So, in order for Jesus to actually live in his highest good and elevate, I don't believe that he elevated because of that. I know that's a crazy thing to say, but Judas was not meant to be there. So, but I believe that soul contracts, and I believe in soul contracts, soul family, all that stuff, all those things, right? He was surrounded by his soul family, but he brought Judas with him around that. Now, I believe that he was on his highest good in terms of being with his soul family, but I don't think that Judas was in his soul family, right? I think that was a soul contract, a soulmate, yes, but like a soul contract that needed to be written out, right? I think it's more so a warning of allow soul contracts to fizzle out, or you will not, you will suffer, right? Jesus suffered greatly for keeping Judas around. If you really think about it, all of that happened because Jesus kept Judas. He went through those days of torture. He was on the cross. He was starved. He was whipped. He was beaten. He had the crown on and all that stuff and all those things because he kept Judas around, right? So it's a warning to not keep false people around. And it's also another warning of like false prophets, because what Jesus and his disciples or his soul family, whatever you want to call them, right, was probably filled with prophets, if you really think about it, right? But the false one out of all of those was the one he was closest to, which was Judas, right? So Jesus said, beware of false prophets, but did he say that? I don't know who said that, but and as such, right? So I believe that it was meant to play out for it to be seen by everyone, or by a lot of people, by most people, right? In order to for people to see that, you keep around the wrong person, then you will be betrayed greatly, and betrayed in such a way that will stop you from achieving your goals, whichever goals that Jesus had, outside of being, sacrificed, right? But Jesus' sacrifice was also, I guess, a way to prove that, the body is only temporary and the soul is forever. The spirit is forever and as such, right? So his sacrifice served multiple purposes, as well as served as a warning to all, right? You could actually extend that and say one of his sacrifices to help people elevate is to not keep around people like Judas. You know what I'm trying to say? It's like the one way in order for you to elevate and live out your purpose and live a happy, fulfilling life is to not keep around someone that will betray you, no matter how much you love them, right? But yeah, it's a very, very controversial thing to say. I'm pretty certain. But are you gonna keep around someone who will betray you? You're not, right? No matter how much you love someone, you should not anyway, because that is just a recipe for disaster. You look at literally everybody in history. Look at anybody in history. Look at yourself, actually. Look at what you've been through. You have a best friend that betrayed you? That's Judas type shit. You don't want that shit to happen again, right? So it's a lesson in that as well. It's probably gonna be like a shorter video, being honest, because it's just one topic. I'm not debating the Bible. I'm not debating Jesus' life, Although I do believe that if you take Jesus's life, if you were able to take Jesus's life, you would see that Jesus was a lot more in tune probably with his like all areas of himself, um, all corners, both his light and his dark, right? And in his corporeal form and all that, on all those things, right? In order for you to be able to talk to God like that, um, you have to be very, very connected and very, very in tune with both your emotions, your discernment, and your wisdom, right? But in order for him to keep Judas around, he had to ignore at least one aspect of it, right? Because just because things happen or things work out for a very, very high reason, does that mean that it is in your highest interest to you? You know what I'm trying to say? It's like just because they have it worked out the way it did, and it worked out relatively well, doesn't mean that it was the best way, right? But that means that Jesus probably loved Judas so much that he decided, okay, let's go down this path, despite my life being shorter, despite me not being able to like live a full life. You know, this will happen, that will happen. I will pass, but I love him so much that I will do that. Right? That's like a self-sacrificial thought process. But you don't need a self-sacrificial thought process, right? It's not necessary for your highest good, and it's also another warning to not self-sacrifice or be willing to self-sacrifice to in order to cater to other people's emotions and feelings. I'm sure Jesus would have been very, very upset, very, very sad, very distraught, and Jesus probably didn't want that. Verse had very distraught if Jesus were to leave Judas behind, and Jesus probably didn't want that because Jesus was so loving and caring, and forgiving. So he was like, you know what, he's gonna do that, but I forgive him. But he kept him around, so it kind of excused his actions, and that's why I don't believe that Jesus was perfect. Anyways, I'm done. Toodles.